Good evening. My name is Bobby Sixkillington III, and this is Bobby's Hot Takes. Okay, today on Bobby's Hot Takes, I'm going to be dropping the voice actually and everything. I just wanted to get in the mood to shit on something. Today, that kind of gives away my my opinion here, but anyway, today we're going for our premiere episode for Bobby's Hot Takes. We're going to be talking about Pokemon Sword and Shield. If you guys like the format, let me know, because we can definitely do more. I like the idea. I do have a lot of rants built up inside, and we literally got this for that bit. Anyway, I got a lot of rants built up inside, but today we're going to be talking about Pokemon Sword. Now, it's going to be a free-form sort of shitting on, but I do have notes, but they're all kind of linked together, so I'm not too sure how we're going to deal with it. So, if you're a fan of Pokemon Sword, if you like Pokemon Sword, that is fine. If you like Pokemon Sword and Shield, good for you. I am glad for that. And I'm not saying it's a bad game. Pokemon Sword and Shield as a game is fine. What I am saying is it is a bad Pokemon game. Compared to the other Pokemon games, it is bad. And I say that as someone who is a Pokemon fanatic who has played at least a minimum of one Pokemon game in every generation that has ever been released. I bought a Nintendo 64 to play Pokemon Snap and Stadium 2. I bought a GameCube to play Colosseum. I bought a Wii to play Pokemon Battle Revolution, and more recently, I bought a Switch to play Pokemon Sword and Shield, which I didn't have before. So yeah, like I discovered that in Pokemon Diamond specifically, you know how the little counter counts up how long you've played when you save? It says how long you've been playing. That counter only goes up to 999 hours and 59 minutes. I found that out by playing 999 hours and 59 minutes of Pokemon Diamond. That's what level you're dealing with here. So, anyway, I don't understand why the critics are giving it such praise as well. I don't know where that's coming from exactly, or why a lot of YouTubers and fans have turned their opinion on Brexit. Brexit is a travesty. It is horrendous for the game. The metagame in the competitive scene, while I haven't played it, as you know, because I haven't played it on the channel, I do watch YouTubers that play it, specifically Shady Penguin, Shofu, PokeAim. I watch a lot of them play meta, and the metagame is so shallow. There's so few Pokemon that are actually competitively viable because there's so few Pokemon in the game. You might say, oh yeah, there's 400 Pokemon. That's heaps. Well, yeah, I guess that is heaps, except like you're counting non-evolutions and shit, which aren't like competitively viable at all, you know? It's horrendous, and like they reckon it was to improve the graphics and the animations. The graphics are fine, you know. The graphics are the best a Pokemon game has had, and the animations are okay, you know. But it's not worth the trade-off. No obsessive Pokemon fan like myself gives a shit about graphics and fucking animations over gameplay. Gameplay is number one. Pokemon are number one in a Pokemon game, okay? Anyway, that should be... And on top of that, it wasn't for the graphics and animations. They're selling it back to us later. Which brings me to the post-game. There is no post-game content in Pokemon Sword and Shield except the Battle Tower, unless you count what they're selling back to us post-release for 30 bucks or whatever it is. I think here it's 50 New Zealand dollars or something like that, or 30 US dollars. It's nice to have them back, but they just took it out so they could flog it back to us. That's very EA logic, isn't it? Isn't it? Anyway, aside from that, the one thing that I noticed that critics are giving it a positive thing, this is real booze and it's very strong. The one thing that critics are giving it praise for is the wild area. And I personally believe that the wild area is fucking terrible. It's a terrible open area with nothing in it, and the camping is crap. I don't give a shit about the camping. The wild area, all that did was destroy the other part of the game, which is exploration. There is no exploration in this game. The whole game is on rails. The entire thing. You go from here to here to here to here to here. You talk to the guy, he tells you to go to this guy. You talk to that guy, he tells you to go to this guy. You talk to that guy, blah blah blah. The story's never been good in a Pokemon game. No one's ever played a Pokemon game because they like the story, right? Just like no one's ever played a Call of Duty game because they like the story. No one gives a shit about the story, right? But at the same time, the other games had a sense of exploration, which is something this game does not have. In the other games, you're basically left to your own devices to find your own way from place to place. Like, the basics are there. You have to do this and you have to do that. You have to catch Pokemon, you have to beat gym leaders, right? But to a certain extent, they were in whatever order-ish, you know, and like, you get there however you got there, but in this, it's like, you follow this rigid as shit path. Do the thing, beat the guy, do the next thing, do the next... There's no dungeons. There is no dungeons in this game, unless you count that cave at the start, which I don't, which was like 2 minutes long and was basically just a route with a lid on it. That's not a dungeon. Mount Moon was a better dungeon in the first generation. Was a better dungeon than anything that was in this game. And Mount Moon was like the smallest dungeon in that game. Where's the dungeons at? Where's the sense of exploration? There is no exploration. Everything is fully on rails. From place to place. Rails. Now we still don't have HMs, which is fantastic. I think removing the HMs was one of the greatest things they did 2 generations ago. And what they also did 2 generations ago was make it so that TMs were reusable, which was fantastic for someone breeding competitive Pokemon or that kind of thing, right? Because if you're playing through the game, 1 copy of Thunder is probably enough because you only need it for their 1 team, you know what I mean? But if you're breeding a competitive team or multiple competitive teams, you'll need things like Flamethrower or Earthquake or Stone Edge or Surf. I mean, Surf was an HM, it was always reusable, but you know what I mean. Over and over and over again. So what did they do in this game? The TMs are reusable, but all the bad moves are TMs and all the good moves are TRs, which are not reusable. We fixed this 2 generations ago and they fucked it up again. Why? What was the point of that? Just to make it difficult again? Every time they take 2 steps forward and 1 step back when it comes to competitive battling. Everything else is great as far as they added the mints. The mints is fantastic because that lets you change the nature of your Pokemon. Admittedly, they're kind of difficult to get, like they're expensive in battle points, you know what I mean. EV training is easier than ever, which is fantastic. IV breeding's been pretty easy because the raid battles is a good way to get high IV Dittos, which I showed you in the video, which is nice and all, but that leads me to another thing I don't like. Dynamax. Dynamax and Gigantamax are fucking stupid. They are a terrible mechanic. I can't stand it. It's broken. They're too strong. You only beat a Dynamax by countering it with a Dynamax. Gigantamax moves are overpowered, and there's not a lot of strategy to the use of them. They just, basically, if they Dynamax and you're not aware that they're going to, they will knock something out, you know what I mean? End of story. Megas were the perfect mechanic like this. Megas were perfect because there was a set group of Pokemon that could Mega. Every time you encountered a Scissor or a Beedrill, well, if you encountered a Beedrill, you know it's Mega. If you encounter a Scissor, it could be Mega, but you're always aware of the fact that it might be Mega. With Dynamax and Gigantamax, because it doesn't matter which it is, Dynamax, Gigantamax, anyone can Dynamax, so it can happen any time. You can't be prepared for it. There's no strategy in that. Megas, you could strategize. You would strategize around what your opponent brought to the table. Some of them were overpowered, sure, like Mega Kangaskhan and shit like that, but that's what the Smogon tiers were for, wasn't it? To fix that. But all in all, Megas were perfect. Z-moves were good too. You could only have one. It was really powerful, sure, but you only got one shot, you know what I mean? And it used up your item slot. So that was, you know, balanced. So you could have 1 Mega and 1 Z-move on your team in Generation 7, which I think was really good. But the point is, Dynamax and Gigantamax are dumb. Dumb. I'm also not a huge fan of the designs of the new Pokemon. I quite like the ones that are additions to, like, I like the redesign of Weezing, the Galarian Weezing. I like the Galarian Zigzagoon, Lanoon, and I like Obstagoon. I like all the ones that are old Pokemon that have been redesigned for the new game, I think, except Stunfisk, because who gives a shit about Stunfisk, right? But other than Stunfisk, fuck Stunfisk. But outside of Stunfisk, you know. But most of the other, like Ponyta and Rapidash, Galarian, fantastic. What a great design. Fantastic design. But most of the new ones I'm just like, for the most part. Especially the ones I see all the time. I don't know, the ones that you saw in meta all the time were like Dragapult and Darmanitan. I'm not a fan of the new Darmanitan, although I was never a fan of Darmanitan anyway. So I guess it balances out. But at the end of the day, what are they going to offer in this DLC as well? Like, sell us 100 of the old Pokemon back that we should have already had in the first place, and what? You're going to add exploration in? Because I bet you it won't. There'll be a big wild area where all the new shit is, and that's it. There's your lot. Fucking hooray. Thanks for that. Maybe some new items. I don't know. But it's depressing. It's depressing. Now, like I said, I'm not saying it's a bad game, but I am saying it is probably the worst Pokemon game I have ever played out of the main series. Take that for whatever you will. You know what I mean? I don't understand why the critics are loving it so much. But from the perspective of a fucking Pokemon fanatic who has been playing it for 2 decades, religiously, up to 1,000 hours or more per game, or per generation, or whatever, it doesn't draw me back. I've put 130 hours into this game so far. And 30 of that was just grinding for the fucking Flame Orb. That's another thing I want to have a fit about, is the Flame Orb being locked behind a random reward on the Championship Cup. That shit is bullshit. That is bullshit. What the fuck were they thinking? That's the only decent battle item you can't buy with battle points. Why? What are you thinking? This is really important. Every Pokemon that uses Guts needs a fucking Flame Orb. God. Oh. Okay, that's all my notes, pretty much. There's definitely more I can't think of off the top of my head. I want you to let me know what you think about the game, what you like about it, what you don't like about it. Like I said, there are things about it that are good. There are. It's still the best graphics we've ever had. Like, people have shown it side by side with, say, Pokemon Battle Revolution, which was a fantastic game, but it was still just a fighting game, firstly, and secondly, this is still nicer looking. The animations aren't as good for all the attacks, sure, but it's better looking in general. I mean, it's got, you know, over a decade to have improved upon it, so yeah, it should be better looking, you know what I mean? The Switch might not be the most powerful console on the market, but come on, you know, 2020 and all that. Dynamax feels like a mechanic that's really poorly thought out. The wild area could have been so much more. It could have been like an area that was full of like secret dungeons and secrets and shit like that. Pokemon games were full of secrets, always. And this has nothing. Nothing. There's no secrets. There's nothing to find. There's nothing hidden out there that no one has discovered yet. I remember in is it Gold and Silver in Gen 2 when the unknown cave was there and you're like finding the unknown and going through the cave and it's awesome. Or the Regis in Ruby and Sapphire, I believe it was. Those dungeons and secrets and caves and stuff that you didn't have to do. Like the Zapdos and Articuno and Moltres caves, or areas should I say, you know, in the mainline game, in the original Gen 1 game, were optional. It was all optional. The Mewtwo cave at the end, optional. You know, even like during the main campaign, there was multiple dungeons, but plenty of optional dungeons on the side. What has this got? What? The wild area? You're gonna walk around the wild area fighting raid battles and running into like, I don't know, Pokemon aren't as easy. They're not as hard to catch anymore because they're everywhere. And you go into the wild area, you can catch all of the Pokemon in one place. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to go to a specific place to hunt down a really hard to find thing. You know what I mean? That was one of the things that made like the too much alcohol. The Safari Zone in the first game so good, and in the second game. The second game had that bug catching zone or whatever. But especially in the first game, because some of the Pokemon in the Safari Zone were very, very hard to catch. It made them super rare. It was the only place you could get them. Things like Scyther, Pinsir, and Tauros, and Chansey. You know, those Pokemon maintained their rarity even after you got one, because firstly, you couldn't breed more of them. You know, you had however many you could catch. And that was the only place you could get them, and you couldn't wear them down. You had to just stand there and throw balls at it like a twat and hope that it would stay. My god, this fly won't fuck off. None of the Pokemon in this hold any rarity. I know a lot of that is lost when it comes to like breeding. Once they added breeding in, you can make as many copies of anything as you want. So, apart from like legendaries. But for the most part, so even like starters aren't rare, because you can just churn out 1,000 of the fucking things and then trade them online, or wonder trade them, or whatever you call it on the new one. Mystery trade, that sort of thing. Okay, I think I've ranted long enough. It's nearly been 20 minutes. I'll cut it down a little bit, because, yeah. But you guys let me know if you want to see more, because I've got plenty more rants stored up inside me that I can release at any moment. And maybe I'll work on the costume. Add to it, you know. I do have a tie. So yeah, that's about it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.